order the City of Mexico Beach Planning and Zoning Board regular meeting for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016. We'll start with the roll call, Adrian.
Ms. Kidder.
Present.
Mr. Coakley.
Present.
Chair Teal.
Here.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Mr. Driver.
Here.
Ms. Wilker.
Item 1 is off the list. Need a motion to approve the July 5th, 2016 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the July.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2 down. Well, looks like our first topic this evening under our discussion items is picking someone to be the presiding officer pro tem in the rare occasion that I might not be here. And I guess we're open for suggestions. Or let me put it this way. Is there anyone interested in the position?
I'll do it. You make a good one.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to let him be chairman pro tem.
Yes. In a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, good news. So we'll go to discussion item number 2. Food trailers and trucks. And I think we'll start this with the public responses. If anyone would like to speak to this issue before the council or the board discusses it, feel free to come to the podium. Certainly.
How are you?
We're doing
I own Mr. G's. I'm Senator George. I own Mr. G's. I'm lost, evidently. I was under the understanding that we were grandfathered in. Is that not a case, or?
I asked that question last meeting, and I think the response I got is if a new ordinance is passed, the grandfather doesn't necessarily apply?
That's correct. At this point, they are grandfathered in that we're not allowing any further applications. But the city council could pass an ordinance that would disallow the 2 previous ones. I think this board made it clear at the last meeting that you wish to grandfather both businesses.
Would the council have that option if they so choose?
They have the option.
They could state it like no further or no future food, I guess we're calling them food trailers, would be allowed to set up.
Right.
So that would be at the mercy of the council.
Okay. I guess my thing is, what is it that I'm doing that's wrong? Being that I've been there for almost 3 years
I
and
don't
followed.
think the issue is anything to do with wrong. I think the issue is, do we want 1 more of these, 2 more of these, 5 more of these? Do we want to look like the Apalachicola Seafood Festival?
Right.
And I think for those of us that were here last time, we were pretty much in consensus that no. You know, and I look up and down the beach, I go, well, I'm not sure where they put them.
Right.
But you know what? They'll find a spot.
Well, I guess my thing is that if we have private property that we're own and have the consent and a lease that we're own, would it even, I mean, why would it even fall under removing it if, you know, I pay my taxes, I've done everything to the letter of the law that I'm supposed to, I'm willing to do whatever changes on the outside that I'm allowed to do.
And we understand that, and we appreciate your, both of you's immense cooperation in getting everything where it was supposed to be the way it was supposed to be. I don't think the question is either of our 2 existing trailers.
Okay.
I think the question is, do we want more?
Right, I understand.
And we've had a little bit of public input on it, and my opinion on it is much in line with what I believe to be the consensus about these kinds of issues from the community over time. And I would be willing to bet if we grabbed 500 locals and asked them, do you want more of these in your town? The answer would probably be no.
Right.
Now, it's just an assumption on my part. Certainly seems to be the tilt of the board members that were here last time.
Yes, sir.
And I think we also expressed the ones, the two that are here are totally in compliance, and
Yes, sir.
we have no desire to put either of you out of business.
Okay.
But like Mel said, that falls in the hands of the council.
Right.
All we'll do is make our recommendation,
Okay.
whatever that may be, when we have our discussion.
Well, is there any way that you can put it? I mean, just in the last couple of days, we've got multitudes and multitudes of signatures. And and no one has said anything. I mean, I don't believe there's been any complaints on either one of our buildings at all.
Do you
Our
know
food
of any,
quality
Mel? I
is
don't know.
exceptional.
We have not had it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and like I said, I don't
You don't think it's us
want
at
to
all?
speak for the whole board, but I suspect
Yes,
when
sir.
our discussion starts, you will find that, man, maybe I'm out of school, but you'll find that the board is not here to try to remove either of you
I understand.
from your businesses.
Okay. And just like I
And
said,
we'll find
nobody-
out when we have our discussion. That's just my assumption from the previous discussion.
we are both willing to do whatever needs to be for the
Well,
aesthetic
apparently you've
quality
already
of it.
done everything you
you know.
need to do, because there's no problems, issues, setbacks have been taken care of, you've done everything you were supposed to do. We'll know more when the board discusses it, but
Well, thank you.
I know you haven't surveyed 500 locals and.
no, I'm
That's
just,
one
I'm
process.
just throwing that.
But if you do want an objective measure of interest, I just went on to TripAdvisor and I looked at restaurants in Mexico Beach, and Mr. G's is currently the #2 rated restaurant in Mexico Beach.
Behind the one that's been here for 12 years.
Correct, and I think that's
And on
outstanding.
Yelp and Urban
Yeah.
Spoon, I'm actually number one. And I'm not touting that, that's not what I'm saying, but it is my business
Hey,
and I
blow
don't
your
foul
horn.
for it. You know what I mean? But it is, I mean, if you'll read the reviews, not just look at them, but actually
Sure.
read them. Cannot wait to get to Mexico Beach to see Mr. G's. But it's not just that, it's a beachside cabana. I mean, you can run off the beach and grab a taco, something to drink, and roll back to the beach. You don't have to get dressed and stuff. But like I said, I'm not going to take it up. I know you got busy times, but we both are in constant communication, and anything that we can do to betterment it, we have no problem doing that.
And-
We just want to be able to operate our business, that's all.
I understand.
Well, that was my point in my comment, that
Sure.
regardless of what anybody else thinks or the signatures, if you look at what's out there now, the public is interested in that. And to take it away, that would be taking an asset away that they currently
And I think-
value, and it might be the exact same thing in Shoebies. My son works for Shoebies, so I may have a conflict there. But because of that, I'm also there quite a bit.
Right.
And I observe what happens there, and there's just happy families getting ice cream.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to take either one of those away from Mexico.
Well, I did hear one thing that kind of was, what I didn't understand, and I want to ask the mayor that himself, but he made a comment that we're taking away from the local brick and mortars, and we're two very tiny units. To say that we can move in and in a year and a half or 2 years' time, take away from restaurants that have been here for 30 years, states one thing. Evidently, people weren't happy with those restaurants and they go elsewhere, or there wouldn't be an issue. But I think our little amount that we make during the day is very low on the number scale
Yeah.
of being a heavy
Well, I
impact in
think if
financial.
you had moved in 3 months ago and the 5 other places to eat in town were all going, wow, this guy taking on. No,
Right.
well, we know that's not happening.
Right.
We know
Okay.
that. And I hope the council would recognize that.
Me too. Thank you guys for your
You bet.
time.
Yes, sir.
I'm also from Mr. G's. we have phone calls every day. Are y'all gonna be there in October? We planning our vacation in October. We're coming to Mexico Beach. If you're gonna be there, if you're not gonna be there, where are you gonna be? That's where we wanna go, because we love your food. We've got it from Kansas, Kentucky, Atlanta, where they've got hundreds of food trucks. We've eaten at your place before. Nothing stands up to it and everything. And I mean, even California, they say, well, this California is a place seafood tacos originated, but you got them beat all to pieces. I mean, it's a icon. They want to come to Mr. G's.
I see them lining up to eat.
Yeah, they do, and everything.
Now, me personally, I have not heard from any other food or beverage provider in our beach that you're stealing all their business, you're doing this, you're doing that. Not to say that that may or may not have occurred. I haven't heard it. So, like I say, this will be a recommendation that we make today, whatever it may be, and the council will be the decision maker.
We sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? So we'll open this to our planning and zoning board discussion.
I've got one comment, basic addressing that. If you drive up and down the street, especially in the summertime, I don't see any other restaurant or eatery lacking for cars in the parking lot. You try to get into
And people standing
Mango's, you
outside.
try to get into Killers, you try to get into Toucans. Everybody is full, and I think there's, competition is healthy, and I think there's plenty of business to go around. Now, in the fall and the off-season, and the snowbirds are here, and as you point out, you've got people like you who come not in the summer season, so I don't think there's any problem at all.
I would be willing to bet that the two businesses we have, their monthly sales volume goes down just like any other business in our community. And anybody else want to make a comment?
Before we talk about the trailers, I'd like to address the truck issue for a minute. In looking at the peddlers and solicitors regulations, I don't think that's sufficient to cover food trucks. If you look at it, there's no safety regulation in here at all. And based on the way I read this, they can set up right on Highway 98, people right out there on the right of way and everything else. And we're talking about safety issues for the trailers are concerned, but apparently the way that this ordinance is written, there's no safety concerns for food trucks. I think that should be addressed.
I would like to point, my idea is that these two are not food trucks.
Correct.
They are semi-permanent food establishments.
They're-
To me, a food
They-
truck has
they-
a motor in it, it drives up,
Well-
stays for a few hours and leaves.
I think these two businesses fall under food trailer, not food truck.
Well, that's why I'm saying, I'm trying to address the trucks right now, because I think it's a safety issue. But you gonna let them park anywhere, because based on the way this is written, they can go basically anywhere as long as it's general commercial or tourist commercial.
And I think they should be addressed as two separate issues.
That's what I'm saying, I think this needs to be addressed first.
And I think if we could, maybe we want to discuss the food trailers first, and perhaps if we want to make a motion or vote on it, and then if we want to go on, I'd rather not lump the two together.
Yeah, and that's what I want to understand from maybe the city's perspective, if Mel could give us some guidance. Are we trying to make a recommendation on grandfathering of the two existing, and a recommendation on future food trailers, and a recommendation on food trucks? All three?
That covers it.
Yeah, I think on the food trailer issue, it's a two-part issue. Do we want more? And if so, are the guidelines that are laid out ones that we're comfortable with? Or do we not want any more? And then the third issue being, how do we feel about the two existing ones? Now, if someone can, once the discussion's over, if somebody knows how to roll that into a motion, but I think that's sort of, it's kind of a three-part. Just addressing the trailers is kind of a three-part motion in that respect.
Mel, have any trailer businesses been in touch with City Hall saying, hey, we'd be interested? And if
We've
so, how
had
many?
a couple right away after this discussion first started. We had another one last week, and I told them that we have a moratorium right now. That
There is
might-
an interest, that's-
So there's an interest. So either we allow them or not, and then if we allow them, like the chairman said, how are we going to regulate them?
I just don't know we have any room. Where are we gonna put a semi-permanent food trailer? I mean, they've gotten the Kent property, I guess, and then the bank property, and they fit in there, but I don't think there's a whole lot of room in town for
But
any
if you
more.
leave the door open, in my opinion, if you leave the door open, they'll find a nook or cranny somewhere that we're not seeing.
Well, then maybe we need to close that door. Identify them as what I'm calling semi-permanent, non-mobile semi-permanent establishments. Say we grandfather in, we recommend grandfather in the two we have, and we don't have any more. Then we address mobile food trucks that might want to drive over for the day on certain occasions, get a peddler's permit, and comply with possibly some of these
Sounds to me like you
recommendations.
were starting to form a motion there.
Would you not?
So let me ask this question. Is there any more, and there certainly can be, but is there any more discussion on the food trailer issue? Anybody want to make another point, or do we want to try to go for a motion?
Well, just one thing, if you get more trailers in here, you know, if they've got a product that the community wants and is willing to support, then why would we deny them the ability to come in here? As long as we set up regulation and rules that they abide by, and they produce a product, pure capitalism, that the community supports, why would you want to deny them? I don't understand that.
Well, my feeling on it is, and we'll each take our turn here, the last thing I personally want to see driving down Mexico Beach is a dozen of these things. Don't know that there's a dozen places, but they might find them. I think the community has spoken many times to the integrity of the community, of our town, and what they do and don't want it to look like. This is just my opinion, and I remember the day I drove down Mexico Beach back in the mid-2000s, and I saw 5 giant cranes at different locations building condos. And I went, oh my God, what's happening to our town? If the door's open, do you want 10 of these littering US 98? Well, I shouldn't use the word littering, I'm sorry, but stuck in little nooks and crannies on 98? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if they're not something the public wants, the public won't support it.
True enough, that's how capitalism works. People don't go buy their product, they'll close their doors and go away.
And while I don't get there often, I believe there's some of these very same type trailer-based businesses up and down 38 that has loads of probably covenants and restrictions, but when I go down 30A and before I ever make it to Seaside, just past Rosemary, they're tasteful little semi-permanent trailers in a much more upscale community, so I don't necessarily equate them to litter either, so.
Well, I said, I think I misused the word. I'm thinking of where, when they find these places, to be able to meet whatever rules. And granted, I have no problem with, if they get business, they stay open. If they don't, they shut down. I think it's, to me, more of an aesthetic issue of not cramming the town full with things. But that's just my take. I don't.
Well, one aspect of it too is we have vacant frontage. We have the old Marquard's Deli is empty. There's shops right up here. A couple of those that are empty. There are some places, if somebody wanted to come and bring a new product in, there are places they could locate that are fixed structures previously used for food sales. So,
Yep.
So do we really need people coming in with pulling trailers in and setting them up? One consideration. I agree with you. You're saying if somebody comes up with something really unique that people would want, might be nice, but I think we got everything pretty well covered between steaks, burgers, tacos, you know. I can't think of other than an Oriental restaurant or something, which is not really, to me, beach food. So, hope I don't offend anybody with that. But I think the bases are pretty well covered right now.
I think what these two gentlemen more are speaking to, just the opportunity of free enterprise, being able to,
Or just fairness, I'm in agreement with you that if you're able to turn the clock back and deny these two businesses, well, then you wouldn't have two assets that benefit this beach and tourists that come to this beach and enjoy going to those places. So I think if someone came and complied in the same way and they decided that they wanted to cook ribs because they thought maybe there was that opportunity here, and the public supported it and it was done properly.
so just throwing out a possibility, the lot across from the El Governor, if the Baxters chose to, they could allow one or more food trailers in there if they meet all of the regulations. I'm not sure where else up and down the beach. If the deli is vacant and the Marquards want to get a little bit of money out of that, they could allow a trailer to go in that parking lot. They could allow, and I think if we really thought about it, there's probably many places they could be. Is that okay? That's probably personal opinion on everybody's, any one person that you ask, whether they want or don't want to see the community dotted with semi-permanent food trailers.
I think we have a map we can look at for that to determine the density of the dots, so.
The bottom line is that if you allow it, you regulate it the same as you would any other establishment. So you're not going to get a fly-by-night operation.
I don't think I'm necessarily, even from my viewpoint, talking about a fly-by-night operation. I'm talking about driving into the city limits and driving out of the city limits. Do we want our town to have 5, 7, 9, who knows how many food trailers tucked in little locations? I'm not looking at, I'm looking at it more from sort of a, what I would call I don't know how to do this, and I don't want to be offensive, but sort of an image viewpoint of, is this a carnival town? I don't think with 2 it is at all. But I think if there's 10, then what does your city look like? What does your city represent? I don't know.
I think one safeguard we would have, I would assume, anybody wanted to come in, they would have to come to City Hall and get a I know there's a peddler's permit, but if they wanted to do one of these food trucks, would they come under the peddler's permit? But they would have to
Yeah.
get some kind of permit from the city.
Oh, absolutely, there's
Some
a
kind
whole
of
set,
clearance.
there's a whole
And
set
so
of rules.
I would assume the city manager would examine, okay, where are you gonna be? Do you meet all this, setbacks, all this kind of stuff, safety equipment? And to make sure they didn't just plop down somewhere. I guess that would be the safeguard. So if somebody does come in with something reasonable, that would be a filter right there.
Just as a quick informational note, it was mentioned the Marquardt building might be available. The owner of that property is also the same person who purchased and demolished the motel on 42nd Street. And he's trying to find something that would fit not just the motel property, but that property as well. So it may or may not be available for anything in the future, just FYI.
I think we already have a set of rules and standards.
It's very, very weak. I mean, right now, you walk in with a letter from a business saying, yes, you can park here, you pay me $32.50 or $67.50, whatever it is, and show me your EIN number, and you're done. That's it.
That's not sufficient.
Well,
That's all we do.
There's a little more to it.
Is that the peddlers?
They've got to meet the set, no, we're just talking about food.
No, I mean, are you talking about the peddlers?
It's not the peddlers, it's
not in that.
separate from that.
Just
Yep.
the food trailers, but they have to meet
Setbacks,
setbacks.
can't be in the right of way.
I would assume they get inspected by the
Nothing with us.
hotel and restaurant people or whoever does that. In terms of sanitation, cleanliness and all those kind of rules.
But as, in terms of the city, we issue based on a letter from a business, paying that fee, and making sure it follows the LDR, of course. That's
What-
it.
What other restriction should there be? If they meet the setbacks, if they meet the pay the bill? I mean, how,
If you read the handouts that we got 2 months ago from St. Pete, and I don't recall, there were other two communities, maybe San Antonio or something, everything in there was very reasonable to establish a food trailer. And that's the kind of thing I would envision us having here, is a separate ordinance for food trailers along the lines of what those other cities have.
We kind of looked at all of those ordinances and some others and took some bullet points from each of those and put them in this memo that you've got.
That's
So-
what these are, suggestions. for
Suggestions
consideration.
for rules for the future.
The only thing that in addition to that, I think we need a definition section too. Where we definitely define what we're talking about.
Without question, once the ordinance would be crafted, that would be appropriate.
So based on the earlier comment about there's not that many places they can go, there's a whole lot more than you think if you have a letter from the owner. I mean, every one of these businesses, Mangoes could put one in front, Parker could put one in front, Castaways could put one in front, as long as they had their setbacks met and a letter from the owner.
Where would they put it in front of Mango's, in the parking lot there?
Just as an example, they have a, you know.
Okay.
Vacant lot next to Mango's.
Well, there still has to be enough business to sustain it. Yes, they can, but what's the likelihood?
I think that I'm against them, and, it's just me, personal opinion. Nothing against the folks that have them, we participate, we use them and stuff like that. I just think from a general aesthetic standpoint, it doesn't portray the image that Mexico Beach is shooting for. That's just me personally. I think if we do move forward and do allow the food trailers, well, number one, I have a problem. If we're gonna, as I understand it, the licenses are 1 year, 6 months, depending on what you read. They're coming up for renewal. So the question is, do we renew the two that we have? I think that may be some of the static that you were hearing. Secondly, then we need to figure out their 6 months and 1 year. Next, I think we need to understand, if we open the faucet, it's open. And who's gonna determine, I don't like Chinese food, so therefore we have enough? It needs to have some sort of either number or, we're gonna approve each one at a time. Well, then you've got discrimination issues, I think, with, well, I know Johnny's been around the city a long time, we're gonna approve his, but Joe just moved here. There's no way we're gonna approve that.
well, I think,
So I think you run into a lot of issues like that. So I think once you open that faucet and understand that if we're gonna do it, let's have some tight regulations so we can say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, or how do we determine we don't need any more?
Well,
Or
I
maybe
don't-
we can have just as many as we want.
I'm not not so sure you can put a number on it, because what you have to develop is, if you're going to allow them, is the criteria which they have to meet in order to do that. And that's what Mel is suggesting, that these bullets have a lot to do with that. I don't think you can, whether they're someone new to the community or somebody who's been here 40 years, I don't think is a factor in that. Is what you're applying to, where you're applying to put your food trailer, meet the necessary criteria. Anybody that meets that criteria can put a food trailer in. I think more the question, at least from my viewpoint with you, is if they find 25 locations over the next year or two, do we want to see 27 food trailers in our community lining the street? Can they put them on 15th Street if they so chose, or any other, even if they'll be off the beaten path? This is a little facetious, but they could put them anywhere where it's zoned appropriate to have one. Of course, if you're not on 98, we all know you're probably dead in the water business-wise, but the point being, you open the floodgate, we can look through these bullets, but if this is something we're considering doing, I would assume we have to actually form that criteria to suggest to the council. Or can we be more broader and just ask the council to develop? I think it's planning and zoning. I think it would be sort of our responsibility to say, is there anything we want to add to these bullets? Is there anything we want to take out of them if we're considering a positive response to allowing food trailers in our community? We can't just say, theoretically, make a motion that we allow food trailers. We have to say what criteria they have to meet in order to have a food trailer in our city limits. So with that being said, I think we kind of got to see which way we're leaning, because if we think we're going to approve it, we've got some work to do, and that is to outline the criteria necessary within the existing rules and regulations, and anything else that we might like to add or suggest. Lisa, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Y'all have consistently referred to these as food trailers. I'd like to know from Mel, because I believe you mentioned there was something other than food that wanted to come in when we had this first spate of applications. Can you tell us what other types of businesses have wanted to bring trailers in? Is it all food?
Snow cone guy, like a Hawaiian ice type thing. Question is, you may or may not consider that food.
Wasn't there at one point a retail fellow who wanted to bring t-shirts in?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. My question then to the board is, you're dealing just with food trailers, so if someone wants to bring some other type of retail business in, are you going to consider that, or is that even within the realm of possibility?
I thought I saw.
Well, keep in mind, one of the bullet points simply says, trailers may only sell food, no other goods, wares, or other items may be sold.
Yeah, I think that's.
So this is the type of
I
thing
don't
where,
have those bullet points.
Right, so
That is covered in these bullets that Mel came up with.
I don't think they can hang t-shirts outside and sunglasses and hats and sell those,
tattoos.
unless they're edible hats. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't
But
want to
yeah,
go down that road.
I realize you don't see it, but that is a bullet that already exists. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if you, I know it's during board discussion, that's not off for comment.
That's all right.
I appreciate that.
We're kind of informal in this.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Novak. I'm the husband to Kelly, owner of Shoebies, also a taxpayer and a property owner here in Mexico Beach. So I come and I've listened to y'all's discussion the last couple of months as well as the city councils, and I think everyone's hitting on great points. And one thing that I would just offer from Kelly and I is there's a very fundamental difference between trailers and trucks. As you all know, you've read San Antonio's, and I think you had another one from out west, and there's a ton of literature as this market grows. But there's a transient aspect to these mobile trucks, which is you turn them on, you gas them up, you drive them in, you sell food, and then you go back to a commissary that the state statute refers to it as, where you load up, you freeze your food. And then you have actual trailers that are really semi-permanent structures that are coming to the community. You have two of them right now. There is a whole different investment in the community and that property, which is, the aesthetic looks to it, the investment in the infrastructure, the setback requirements, the accommodations and it's really an attribute to the community that the two are there right now. I think they're very attractive. They draw people off the beach. It's inviting to families, and it's not a transient aspect. It's a semi-permanent structure that you have, and it's an addition to the community that they're part of Mexico Beach. They're part of this community. People hopefully write both of them up, and I've seen Shannon's reviews, and I know Kelly's got thousands of satisfied customers from her first year, and the folks really enjoy going back, and it's a family environment, as Jack had mentioned. So there's really a fundamental difference, and as you all go down this line and want to maybe make some suggestions, we just simply offer that if there is a distinction made between them, that Mexico Beach isn't a place where you want people pulling in on 98 and finding a spot and pulling in every day, that there is an ability to restrict the mobility or trucks. But if you have an investment from a small business who employs people and pays taxes and is an addition to the community that's year round, whether it's seasonal or not, it's there. And everyone knows it's there, and it's secure, and there's lighting. And Mel's comments of all the things he's suggesting in here, there's a ton of literature, as I mentioned. There's a bunch of law journal reviews throughout the country that actually touch on what Mel's talking about, which is it safe? Is it inviting? Is it secure? What are the setback requirements? Is it out of right-of-ways? What are the efforts made by the small business to be a part of, not a brick and mortar, but it is a small food business. And so I've just asked and offered to you all that if you do go down that line, and I know the discussion is great, but if there's a distinction between trucks and trailers, the trailers are here and they're not going anywhere. And you know it's going to be there, and our code enforcement and our police chief and our city clerk and our city manager and our mayor and our city council and all the people that live in Mexico Beach know those folks. They're a part of the community. Whereas you have a truck that comes in from somewhere else, it's hard because the State Department of Health regulates their food, checks their, how clean and sanitary they are every day, then they drive off, and the food might be prepped somewhere else. The Department of Health comes and checks both of these businesses on a regular basis. So it's a state guidelines, and then there's also, obviously, as Adrian touched on earlier, there's a limited checklist right now for what the businesses go through to get a permit. But as you move forward, we strongly obviously encourage you all continuing to support those local businesses as they support the community, but to allow them, and as these regulations come in, as Shannon touched on, I speak for Kelly that we would embrace them because we've met them all. And the ones that are in there, we think they're great because if you do have future suitors that come in here and want to set up a trailer, they're buying into Mexico Beach. They're buying into the community. They want to add something to the community. They want to employ people. They don't want to leave every night and go somewhere else. They're here, so you all would have your eyes and ears on them every night too. So we just thank you all for putting this, because we know it's an ongoing dialogue with the city, but we encourage your discussion because it sounds very promising, but there is a distinction between the two.
Absolutely, and I think earlier I stated, let's talk about food trailers. Then if we choose to, we can talk about food trucks. Or it actually can be incorporated in one motion. Well, no, I guess it would have to. You can't allow and disallow in one motion probably, but yes, sir, I understand completely that, and I think everyone on the board understands there's a very distinct difference between the two.
And the regulations you're talking about right now for trailers, for someone to come in, as you all just discussed, they have to meet all those thresholds. So it is a hurdle to pass that the city can say, just like you do with any planning and zoning issue, just like we have with large developments or commercial businesses, put them through all the stress tests to make sure that, and it is, it's a deterrent, because if someone's gonna go through all those steps, they bought into Mexico Beach.
Yeah.
They want to be here.
And I think your business is a prime example of that, as I think also the other one where you had to make some adjustments to play by the rules and be between the lines, and, you know, you either played or you went away.
Yeah.
And I understand that's exactly what you're saying about any future business. You've got to meet this criteria if you're going to put a food trailer in our community. I think we're at a point where we have to either decide if we want to take on the task. I don't think we can just blanketly say, well, these are some great bullets, and let's put those in a motion that says we're going to allow them. We have to look at what they say. Is there anything not there that should be there? Is there something in those bullets that is there or that isn't there that we think should be inserted? The question being, would we want to try to develop a motion, or do we need to have now some discussion on that criteria which we approve of for food trailers?
We had also talked about at the last meeting possibly having a workshop so that we could work through
We did.
some of these guidelines and regulations to make sure that everyone's on the same page and we're in agreement with all of them. So, I mean, there are a lot of concerns. I mean, for instance, the first one about having written permission to vend on private property, you know, that's a very broad category. You know, we could look at outlining or limiting or putting limitations on that.
Or
But
does that need to be zoned a certain kind of zoning to do it?
Exactly. And number 3, which is a good one, units are not permitted to obstruct the flow of traffic for neighboring businesses, but we also need to consider the residents as well. Because I've been involved in one of those situations. So there's a lot of different things. I'm not opposed to the food trailers. The food trucks, you know, I do have some concerns about those. And I am definitely for keeping the 2 businesses that we have here. They're established, they've already proven themselves as a part of the community. But, you know, are we open to having a workshop so we can kind of make some guidelines?
Does everybody
I would
feel
think so.
about
There are some points that I don't understand. I'd like some definition on what an audible form of entertainment, just what constitutes some of these things.
I would recommend that we determine whether or not we want to allow more trailers. And if we do, then we establish a workshop where we can actually sit down and discuss all this stuff. If we don't want to allow more trailers, then we're talking about a moot point.
So I don't know what rules of Roberts would say, but do we want to sort of informally each give our opinion? And if it's in favor of allowing them, then we'll proceed with a workshop.
That's appropriate.
That's appropriate. So informally, are you in favor of having a workshop and possibly developing the needed criteria to allow food trailers in our
Yes.
community?
Yes.
And you, sir?
I really don't think we need any more food trailers.
Okay.
I recognize that somebody might come in with something unique, but the odds of that,
So we're sort of one and one.
yeah.
How about you, Mr. Carrier?
My opinion is that we not deny anyone else in the future the same opportunity that these businesses have had. So I would like to have
Go for it.
a workshop and come up with the proper regulations to keep it safe.
Yes.
So generally speaking, just from the 4 of you, it's sort of 3 to 1, and wouldn't matter what I think, which my wife tells me that all the time. So I think then it would be appropriate that maybe we look at a calendar and talk about a workshop, and everybody take these bullets and anything else they can find as a resource, and we'll come together in a workshop and lay down what we feel is the necessary criteria to allow future and current, if they'll meet that criteria, to be allowed in our city. So we have, there's no designated dates for us to have a workshop other than not conflicting with any of the council's activities in this building.
Or this building, period. Or this building at all. This building's used for many other things besides council.
So do we need to find out some available dates and then we'll pick them?
You can shoot a date and I'll tell you if it's good or bad. I've got it all, so.
Do we need at least a week's prep time on this?
I will be out of state for the next month.
For the next month? Well, throw your vote out the door. Okay, now,
Can we wait a month for him to get back?
well, maybe we will, but let's find out, when do these two businesses have to renew?
September 30th they expire.
By October.
By October. So waiting a month and maintain the moratorium on any new ones coming in. And we can look to a date where we'll all be available for a workshop.
And have time to do some sufficient
And
research.
yeah, do some homework. So this being August 2nd, so you'll be gone till
When will you be back?
September, after Labor Day.
Probably right after Labor Day, because my daughter's gonna be promoted right on the 1st of September.
So we're looking at any date after starting the second week of September. What do you have available, sir? Well, let's start with this. Is there a particular night of the week that's better? We want to rule out Friday nights because maybe we're with family and friends, or who knows,
Or
or
the weekend or something, yeah.
certainly rule out
Yeah,
weekend
weeks.
nights.
When's their next meeting?
So are we looking at sort of any Monday through Thursday that we don't have a regular meeting and that this is available?
The 5th is Labor Day.
It's a problem.
So Adrian, here's the criteria. Any Monday through Thursday after this, starting in the second week of September.
Starting like the 12th.
Well, that's not sufficient time to develop something, I'd say just do it without me. Because if we do it the 12th, that's not sufficient time to come up with guidelines to allow
September
them.
12th?
It's got to be renewed by the 30th, is that correct?
I thought you said-
September?
Oh, the
That's not
30th.
sufficient
I'm sorry,
time.
I thought you said December.
No, October was the
October.
new year.
October 1.
So this has to,
Does this have to be done before they
I don't
renew?
think so.
Yeah, they
Or
can
can we
Doesn't really
just-
have to.
Okay.
We'll just renew on what we're doing now.
Just extend month to month, or?
I'll just do a renewal as now.
Yeah.
If we decide not to grandfather in, we can refund that money, but it sounds like everybody says we're gonna grandfather them in anyway, so it's not gonna matter.
that's what I'm thinking. So anything after, what did you say, September 12th?
September 12th would be the second Monday.
Labor Day's the 5th.
What's wrong with the week following Labor Day, the 6th, 7th, 8th?
Nothing
6th is council.
on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday rather, right?
Well, we were going
Oh,
to
because
get
of
to
the
it
holiday.
during the various and sundry items, but we probably ought to discuss it now. The city council traditionally has a pre-agenda meeting on the Wednesday following the Tuesday of this board meeting. That has been confusing for a lot of people because they think, okay, it's always the first Wednesday of the month. No, it's not, because if the first is on that Wednesday,
It jumps.
it's the second Wednesday. So it's very confusing for people. So the board decided that they would meet on the first Tuesday of the month, the second Tuesday of the month, and the fourth Tuesday of the month.
I thought we met on the first Tuesday.
That's where we're
You
getting.
used to. But they said that you could meet the Monday preceding the first
Oh, so they
Tuesday.
want to move our meeting time.
Right. Now, the problem with that if the first of the month is on a Tuesday, you're actually meeting in the previous month, but this is a minor detail that might happen once in a while.
And the other problem you have is the Monday before the first Tuesday is Labor Day.
Who's on first?
So we're not gonna be able to do it the 5th. That's Labor Day.
When would this,
What about the 8th?
because I read that in the other thing where, and I thought, wait a minute, that's when we meet. When would this come into effect?
Next month.
Next month.
They've already had the first reading of the ordinance striking their meeting schedule. The second one will be this month.
So we would then become meeting on the first Monday of the month.
The Monday preceding the first Tuesday. Not necessarily the first Monday.
Except in September. Because that Monday is the Labor Day.
It's a holiday.
The Monday after,
The Monday before the first Tuesday.
before the first Tuesday.
Except for September because it's a holiday.
We like to make things as complicated as humanly possible.
You've
Yeah, We've
succeeded.
done a very good job of that.
Is there any reason we can't still do it this first Tuesday at
So
4
you-
o'clock and then go
so-
straight into the?
Let me ask this thing,
Agenda.
in the month of,
No.
What was your proposed date?
I said, is there any reason we can't do planning and zoning at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, the first Tuesday, and go straight into pre-agenda for the petitioners and everybody just to sit through one day? Is that possible?
4 o'clock?
Assuming they don't take more than 2 hours in their meeting. But you never can gauge that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think over time, used to be meetings held earlier, and we got a response from the community that, hey, I'm at work, or I can't be there, you need to, and I think that it's sort of, maybe not set in stone, but it's pretty routine now that when
City council
possible
meets at 6 PM. All council meetings are at 6. Planning and zoning is totally different.
Oh, I understand it's totally different, but it's not totally different to the people
Correct.
that can come to the meeting,
Correct?
you know? And that's where, I mean, I think we need to work the calendar so we still have a 6 o'clock meeting. I think that's important, personally. You know, and how many of these people couldn't have been here at 4 o'clock today? So,
So when do we meet in September and when are we having this workshop?
there you go. When do we meet in September? We meet, because of the holiday,
Really can't meet the 12th, that's our first hearing for the budget.
Same with the 26th,
Or is that that's in August though, isn't it?
September.
September, okay.
so our next meeting, and maybe we can fit a workshop in, well, no, we gotta have a workshop before that meeting,
So you're back in August.
but we lose one of our members during that month. I think it's important that we're all here for the workshop and the meeting.
What about September the 8th? Did we?
September the 8th, there's a meeting in this building at 6 o'clock. Same with the 1st. Same with the 15th. 15th is during the day though, it's not gonna be at night.
So you're saying we could have the workshop on the 15th
Of September.
of September?
If you wanna do Thursday, but you can do a Wednesday. You could do a Monday, the 12th, not the 5th or the 26th, or not the 12th,
But we'll have a
19th.
regular meeting prior to the September 15th, right? Or not?
No idea what day.
Are there any items that you know of yet to come before the board in September?
At this point, I'm not aware of one. I know we had somebody talking about a lot split today, but I don't
Too
know the
late.
time frame for getting that application. No, haven't had it yet.
And it won't be in time, it'll be October at the earliest.
Okay. So in answer to your question, we don't have anything.
So right now, yeah, it doesn't appear that it's really.
So we could make the workshop the meeting.
That's true, we could do the workshop and then move to the meeting, it'd just be a little bit longer night.
Maybe the only topic.
September 7th, it's a Wednesday.
I was not gonna say that week right after Labor Day, because, works for me. Jim will
At
be
6
back.
o'clock. So Wednesday, September 7th of 2016 at 6 PM. We'll start with a workshop and then go to a regular planning and zoning meeting.
If we have it.
Well, what if, depending what we put together, we may have this issue for the regular meeting
So let's just make it a meeting so then you can vote. Don't even call it a workshop.
and just be prepared to have a long discussion.
Sure.
All right. So our next meeting will be September 7th, September 7th, 2016 at 6 PM, and it'll start with we'll call it a regular meeting, but we'll be prepared to have our workshop discussion to begin that meeting. Does that fit with everybody? Okay. Workshop and meeting. Okay. And we'll worry about future meetings once we know what the council's gonna do to us. So, that in itself then resolves this food trailer issue, slash food trucks. Do we want to address, rather than discuss that tonight, do we want to address the food truck issue? Or do we have enough of an opinion that maybe we want to make a motion about food trucks coming into our
I think you
community?
need to give the audience an opportunity to.
You what?
Look, the audience hasn't had an opportunity yet to discuss the trucks.
Someone in the audience want to discuss food trucks? Or have any issues or ideas or thoughts on them?
I can say one thing. Mine's a trailer, and his is a trailer. The only thing I have to say is that safety-wise, we do have to go through rigorous. When she comes in and starts her inspection with us, we had a restaurant a few years back in Panama City Beach, and they would walk in the kitchen, look at it, open the refrigerator, close it, and leave. When they come in with us, it's almost like they're doing a hazmat research facility. They come in with thermometers everywhere, infrared temperatures, they check every nook
What you're
and
saying is
cranny.
food trucks aren't as
I don't know food trucks so
regulated.
much, bingo, because they can get in, you literally can pull up to some place, drop your food off and leave, and as Mr. Novak says, you have to go back to your facility wherever it's
Sure.
at and actually load up with the food that's prepared
Sure,
there.
and you find food trucks at
Construction sites.
GM where there's 300 workers and
Right.
60 of them come out all at once,
Right,
get their stuff off the food truck. and
2
go.
hours max and you're gone.
You know, I don't know if a food truck would actually survive in this town.
I don't know where it would come from, really, it would have to come from Panama City, and I think I've heard there's one food truck over there that goes around.
I
Yeah,
think
it's a wrap.
I think it's even been, I think it's
That's
even
probably about the
been,
only food truck over there.
That's the only one
They
that I
got enough
know of.
business over
He has
there.
3 locations that he sets up.
I think it's been tried in our town a couple of times and they've not found it.
Well, nobody knows you're there. That's the thing. You know, what a lot of people don't realize is it takes a while to get established. People don't just walk up to any building. You know, you have people come in and try and go, oh, I love that. And the next thing you know, it's word of mouth.
Well,
when you drive in and drive off, you're like a,
Food trucks rely on a short window.
right.
They want to come in, they want to be there 45 minutes or an hour, and then they want to go to another location and be there 45 minutes. And they try to catch that from, who knows, 11 to 2 or whatever, if it's
Right.
a lunch thing. Do we want to sort of informally ask our board whether they want to discuss food trucks or maybe vote on food trucks if we sort of have a consensus that we're not in favor of?
I would say the same thing that we did on food trailers. I think determine whether or not we want them, and then if we want them, I make the point again, is I think the peddler's ordinance is insufficient, then we need to address the same thing with trailers that we're doing with trucks.
Well,
So I think decide whether or not we want them, and then if we do, then go from there.
So do we want to make a motion then about food trucks? And if it doesn't pass, we'll put it in the mix with needing criteria. And if it does pass as not wanting, yes ma'am.
Speaking as a resident, I would not like to see food trucks really in town, primarily because their only option, if they're gonna do any business, is on Highway 98. Let's look at what's already on 98. It's going to be a mess. The safety issue is absolutely at the top priority. It's a wonder people aren't hit on that highway already. Can't you see them scrambling to cross the highway to get to a food truck?
People passing on the right at 15th Street.
Oh, yeah. We could go into a whole
Drives me
litany.
crazy.
But, as a longtime resident, I would hate to see that type of, as you call it, carnival atmosphere, but I simply don't think food trucks are appropriate because we are too tiny. We've only got 3 miles, basically, of highway to do anything on. We don't want them down on that last mile of dedicated beach. I can guarantee
Pulled over on the
you
side of
that.
the road.
No, because we already have a parking problem there, and I can just see them pulling up there, so.
Well, let me do this then. Let's do sort of an informal take with the board and see, for whatever, are you in favor of a food truck enough to incorporate it into further discussion and further criteria? Or do you already have a strong opinion that maybe you don't want them or you don't recommend them?
At this time, I don't recommend them.
And you said,
I think it's really a moot point because I don't know where any food trucks would come from. If there's one in Panama City, so, and even if there were more, we're not a big city that has it, so I would say no.
Don't recommend them.
and you said,
No, therefore I make a recommendation that we
motion.
recommend to the board, make a motion, that we recommend to the board that they not allow food trucks in Mexico Beach.
and do I have a second?
Second.
And all in, well, should I take a roll? Yeah, let's take a roll call on it.
Ms. Kidder,
I agree with no food trucks.
Mr. Coakley,
Yes for the motion to prohibit.
Chair Teal,
I say yes to the motion to deny food trucks in our
Mr.
community.
Kerrigan,
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Motion passes. So we can scratch that off that list. Now, of course, that's just a recommendation to the council. They'll decide whether they want them or not. So we've made a decision about how we're going to handle the food trailer issue here coming up on September 7th. So let's move along to our miscellaneous, and we'll talk about code enforcement officer items.
The code enforcement officer is not here, so they have nothing to report.
Okay. I want to ask a question. It came to my attention, I don't know if this is fact or fiction, but I understand that there was a request for a lot split that went straight to Bay County and was approved without going through our local government. Are you aware of that?
Assuming you're talking near the city hall at the end of Paradise Path.
I'm not positive of the location, but my understanding is that there's a permanent dwelling on one of them. The other one has a garage type, and from the information I received, they didn't bring it to the city, or they did, and then they bounced it straight to Bay County, and Bay County approved it. Is that
It's the same one.
what it actually?
that's on the agenda to speak tomorrow night, in addition to the trailer parking on empty lots, that sort of thing.
Okay.
The second part of that discussion will be this very thing.
So this could be revoked? Or is it etched in stone that it's now a split lot?
Well, if you look at the original plat of the property, where you have two lots that are side by side, our LDR states that we go by the definition of the lot as according to how it was platted,
Correct.
okay? If someone wants to connect those together, the correct way to do is to replat them and make them one lot. But what people do, they go to the county and connect them for tax purposes.
Well, these have been split, and from what I understand, one of them now doesn't meet our criteria.
You are correct. So I guess what I'm getting at is that because we have already had them platted as two separate lots, the city has nothing to do with that. They go back to the county to reverse what they did. Now what they have to do, they got to come into compliance. So right now, there is a garage on one of those lots, and a garage is not a
It
principal
has to have a
structure.
primary or principal dwelling.
Right, so that's an issue we're working through right now with the owner.
Okay. So we still have some leverage there to say, to impose our rules.
Yes, sir.
About that lot.
Right.
Okay.
They've just not been finalized at this point.
Okay. So without the presence of our code enforcement, do we have any other various and sundry items to discuss?
We've already discussed my various and sundry items, so we have no further.
Well, that being said, if there's nothing else from our,
I just had a question. I know that we were working diligently on a particular lot that we were having code violations with, dramatic code violations in regards to junk cars and things like that. And there was a date that came and passed that was supposed to be taken care of or whatever, and just wondered, Mel, if you knew just offhand where we were on that one.
As a matter of fact, I do. I spent quite a bit of the morning on 8th Street this morning. Not because I live on 8th Street, but a block north of where I live. There were a number of derelict cars, unlicensed. The grass was higher than this area here. A lot of junk sitting around. We've given proper notice quite a few times. The date to bring this into compliance was last week. We gave them an extended deadline till Friday. And then once we wanted to give one last attempt on Monday to see if they were going to come into compliance. They did not. So we scheduled Coastal Towing to come in this morning. We took the fence down. We towed cars. We had 10 of our Public Works employees there. We had the Kubota, which has the grabbing hook on it, and we grabbed a lot of the trash, debris, metal, old car parts, things of that sort. They're in a couple of dumpsters right now. We mowed the grass, we trimmed the grass, and we're getting our hours together to, of course, bill the homeowner because they refused to do it. So we did it for them. So that is now taken care of.
Great. Can we lien that property if they refuse to pay the bill?
As a matter of fact, we're going to assess it on their taxes. And then if they don't pay that, then it could be acquired by someone in lieu of payment.
Well, I commend your efforts. I know that's a tough one, and I think word like that gets around. It should help us in general, all through the city.
You know, they argue today that they're sovereign, they're not part of Mexico Beach. And that's all bogus. You're part of the United States, the state of Florida, Mexico Beach. Just go on.
so if there's nothing else from our citizens and nothing else from the board, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're history.